Kyle McNulty, and you're listening to Secure Ventures, the show that follows cutting-edge founders in the cybersecurity space to understand their plights, glories, and revolutionary products. With me in this episode is Ben Coleman. Ben is a serial entrepreneur, and his latest company is right in the middle of an exciting battle between the progress of AI and the defense capabilities to ensure its unethical uses are limited. Ben is CEO and co-founder of RealityDefender, which provides deepfake detection capabilities to determine if visual and audio media is AI generated. This is incredibly relevant right now as there are news headlines every week with exploits featuring deepfake content, a few of which we'll talk about in the episode. Before RealityDefender, Ben founded Covertix, a data protection company he sold after just a year. Before that, he had experience on the cybersecurity side of banking and with another startup which leveraged blockchain for voting. In the episode, we dive into the current world of deepfakes and deepfake detection, along with how RealityDefender is positioned in this space. Ben, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Kyle. Great to be here.
So looking at your background, you got an MBA, you have started a couple different companies before RealityDefender, you worked in banking. It was kind of all over the place, but you had this clear kind of entrepreneurial interest, at least. You worked on several entrepreneur-related activities while you're in school as well. I'm curious, going back to one of those earlier projects you worked on. It was a blockchain-based voting platform, if I'm kind of summarizing it fairly there. What was the impetus behind this project? And very early on as well, I should add. I think it was like 2014, if I'm remembering correctly. So definitely before the kind of crazy blockchain hype that came a few years later. Just take me back there a little bit into how that came about.
Yeah, it's a great question. While my career has been varied, there's been a few consistent themes, and the main one has been around giving people or companies better ways to protect themselves and their data. I've done this at big companies and banks, investing in cybersecurity. I did it at Google, which I interned at during grad school. Obviously, RealityDefender is about detecting deepfakes and kind of protecting the reality of what we see. But just during and after grad school, it was kind of before blockchain was called blockchain, which is distributed ledger technology. And we built a platform that effectively scraped all material from the congressional database from Congress in real time, and then allowed people to kind of own their opinions, their polling data, by voting on issues. We had a kind of a weekend thesis that it's not great when you're just voting for two people in an election. What if you could vote on every single issue? And there's a lot of dangers around direct democracy, which we are all very concerned about. But we built this proof of concept, and then suddenly over a weekend got 1 million users. Definitely ahead of its time. Probably still is a little ahead of its time, but the idea was just that how do you get people passionate and excited about individual issues? And we thought the idea was giving them a voice to share opinions and vote on them, with the idea that elected officials will then follow the will of the voters because they have the data. It didn't work for a million reasons. It's not a business, but it's certainly a really cool project. But we look to a future where people can be more educated about their decisions on individual issues.
Now, we won't dive too far into politics here, but something that stuck out to me from the description of the company was the ability to delegate your vote to experts. And I think over the last couple of years in particular, this whole concept of experts has come under increasing scrutiny in terms of what are those credentials? How much should we actually trust experts versus like first principles thinking for the individual voter? What are your thoughts on this whole delegating ability today? Do you still think that has like some potential legs down the line in terms of the ability to delegate your vote to someone else?
Yeah, I'll stay away from kind of the issues around, legalities of delegating votes. But, at a high level, at least speaking on a personal basis, I go to my friends who I trust, who are experts in this space. I have a friend who's in the armed forces. She clearly has a much stronger opinion and more educated opinion on what's happening in the armed forces. My wife is a woman. She has really educated opinions on things that affect women's health. And so if you think about it, we're certainly, in a sense, looking for potential recommendations and or delegation on issues we're not strong on, the same way we go to a doctor for expertise on our bodies, or a engineer or mechanic for expertise on our cars or planes. So I think it's pretty natural. We just thought there'd be a way to organize it in a better way.
Yeah, totally. I think no question that the overall process that has been taking place for 300 years or so now definitely has opportunity for more technology innovation one way or another. And to your point, probably ahead of its time in several ways, and probably still today to an extent. So moving forward a little bit then, you worked in banking for a couple years. I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons for that in terms of just kind of having to move on to the next chapter. But then you did end up going back into the kind of founder world, right? You started, was it Covertix? That was essentially like file and data management. So to your point, back to kind of protecting customer user data one way or another. And I think if your LinkedIn dates were correct or relatively accurate, you only were there for like a year before you sold it, right? I mean, how did that happen? What was that just rapid pace like for you?
Yeah, taking a step back, I wasn't a banker in the classic sense. I worked for a bank, but my focus was on cybersecurity and tangential areas. So we built really interesting technology at Goldman Sachs. We commercialized that technology, and we invested in companies that were tied in that space as well. So definitely was a great finishing school for me with some of the most exciting cyber practitioners in the world. I sat at a small desk outside the office of Phil Venables, who was the CISO, did whatever he said, whatever he needed. He is now the CISO of Google Cloud. And just being around folks with so much incredible experience has given me a lifetime of opportunities to think about as far as building companies. But natural progression between Goldman Sachs and Covertix and RealityDefender, again, all covering the same general themes, whether it's consumer data or corporate data. But I'd say, at Goldman Sachs is where we started first seeing challenges around potential fraud or impersonation attacks. And at that time, it was really only available were different types of voice matching tools. And without naming any of them, you could find them on Google. And what stuck out to me was that they all required, my voice or my face for different types of voice or image-based authentication. And, where we took that at RealityDefender was initially founded under a nonprofit as a research team, and then receiving some funding from different grants and government groups, and then turning it into a traditional for-profit with backing from some great investors like Combinator and DCVC. But we assume that we never will have the ground truth. We'll never have your voice or face or mine. And we're taking a much more probabilistic view for really two main reasons. One of them is you're never really sure what you're seeing. The second one is when you're supporting clients like banks and governments, you don't want to have any PII data, any personal identifiable information about them or their customers that you could lose, whether you are hacked or an employee somehow loses their login. So what we're doing and what we've successfully commercialized is an ability to provide a probabilistic score on the degree of AI within a voice stream or an image or a video or even a document. We're not thinking about content or context or truthfulness or verifying that the picture is of Kyle. If you were recorded saying, "Hello, my name is Ben Coleman," we would say no AI detected. So just be very careful on where we're focusing, which is on identifying AI, typically used in different types of fraud use cases. We're not doing any ID verification or validation.
And so when you think about that kind of probabilistic determination, what's the threshold that they're typically using to actually make decisions based off this, right? Because this came up when OpenAI released their AI generation detection platform, and that they ended up rolling back sometime last summer, right? Where it was something like a 10% false positive rate, and that ended up being just kind of too high to actually have any sort of meaningful usage. So I'm curious to hear from you what that probability threshold actually looks like for customers to make decisions.
Yeah, that's a great question. We are probabilistic, meaning that we are one of a few different signals that a company uses to flag a potential fraudulent voice or face. And I'd say we have a lot of customization available in our solution, but typically we'll deem something suspicious if it's over 50% confident, and deem it likely manipulated, if it's closer to 90. Now we're very careful on that, but given we're doing inference, which is probabilistic, and not doing provenance, which is deterministic. Provenance is it Kyle? Yes or no? 100 or 0. Our clients really understand what that means and how they should interpret the results. Now, super high confidence, it's effectively yes, it's fake, but we still don't say 100%. Our highest likelihood is 99% because we never have the ground truth. But when it gets lower, you certainly need other types of signals to make a decision. So, companies will still check your name, your birthday, your social security number, but those are also all things that can be found or hacked on the public web or, in your email if your email gets breached. So our view is that even though these technology are being used, before you do all that, you first want to find out, is there a risk that whoever has that information might be an AI bot?
Let's take a step back for a second here and think about the key kind of use cases that we're talking about, right? We've already alluded to the voice authentication for logging in to a banking platform, for example, financial services. You talked about image recognitions. That could be facial identification. I mean, in your mind, what are the top 3 to 5 use cases that customers are actually willing to pay for this type of capability today?
Given that deepfake fraud touches every industry vertical, I'd say it depends on the industry vertical. We're spending a lot of time with financial service institutions thinking about scanning real-time voices from call centers and BYOD. Across media, it's more just scanning inbound media across images and video to show or demonstrate what they're showing on live TV is not AI generated. Working with different government groups, intelligence groups, scanning for misinformation and disinformation and propaganda. There's a whole range of use cases beyond that, but I'd say those are the main ones that we're currently prioritizing.
Okay, and so thinking about those, there's a couple different actual technical foundations for them as well, right? There's audio and there's media involved. How do you think about the challenges that each of those different mediums present?
As far as challenges, I think a lot of it just entails education of the industry. We're the category leader in a space that we're also inventing. So we have to educate, basically scare people to really get that visceral feeling of how does this affect us individually on a personal level, for them to realize what it affects that occur to a company. And I guess the analogy I'll give is, we all think we're secure, but then when our email gets hacked or our social media gets hacked, suddenly we have a new opinion on two-factor or multi-factor or a password manager. We obviously don't want people to get hacked, but to demonstrate some level of personal impact, it's really the only way we could get people to understand how broad and how dangerous the deepfake problem is going to become.
What about from a technical side of actually being able to detect AI-generated audio versus AI-generated pictures? Which of those poses more challenges, and why is that at just kind of a high level?
They're very different, but I'd say
right.
what makes them similar in the sense that it's both a model challenge and a data set challenge. And so what really makes us shine is that we have a dedicated team focusing on ensuring our models and by definition our data sets are properly distributed and representative of what they're looking to represent. And that means ensuring that they don't have any bias, which would then make our models biased and effectively make the models racist. And so that's a massive challenge for our dedicated team to be thinking about how to do that at scale. And And it's something that, we're devoting additional resources to.
Okay. And then what about thinking about the video piece of things, right? Because we're recording this on February 15th, and OpenAI just released today the Sora project, which is their new text to realistic video conversion or generation platform. What sort of like new challenges do you see presented by that, or like new use cases that you need to be aware of for some of these different customers or new customer spaces?
Yeah, I think that this is just one of a range of different generative models. This one in video. I think it's something that we have been expecting, not only from OpenAI. I think we're going to see all modalities become a lot more robust in terms of how they generate media. I'd say that the arms race among the generation and the detection side is much more a feature and not a bug. It really follows the same growth story as every other piece of cybersecurity as companies go to market.
So then if you think about kind of where your platform stands today, what is it that's your key focus? I mean, obviously there's an element of keeping up with each of these new waves, let's say, of generative AI capabilities. There's the element of kind of model tuning and ensuring that, to your point that you mentioned earlier, right, your models aren't displaying like racist tendencies or any other bias that you obviously don't want in front of your customers. How do you think about like product focus, product strategy, given where you are?
Yeah, we have a challenge of having to be a bit universal in what we offer our clients, give it the same solution. We don't want it to be customized because any bias to a certain industry or use case would have the opposite effect on others. And so we're trying to take a real measured approach to ensure we could not only create very robust models, but also an ensemble of different models looking at different things. And they also work nicely together to provide a more accurate score. So we're not building a single model. We're building multiple models, and those models interact together to provide different levels of insights depending on the use case.
Okay. And so thinking about your customers then, if they're asking for these more tailored, customized solutions, and you're giving them something that you're trying to keep as general as possible, is that something where you're allowing customers to like provide their own inputs to tweak a model, or what does that actual deployment structure then look like?
Yeah, I don't think we're not customizing for models for clients to be specific. So we're not doing that. And by definition, we are not using any client data, nor are we able. One of the things we're focusing on now is how to demonstrate to our clients, much like when I was at Goldman Sachs, that their data stays protected and obfuscated, and that they, if they want to bring their own security keys, they can. So this again is not unique to us. It's really something that every SaaS platform is focused on. Our challenge is just we're dealing with a lot more data.
Right. And I guess the piece that I was specifically getting at there is whether the customers have the ability to customize, since you are not doing the customization yourself. But it sounds like the answer to that is no, they're still using the same kind of underlying technology, right?
Correct. Yeah. We have a web app and an API. With our API, clients can then use our API to kind of provide insights to their own solution. So I'd say that's where they can customize it, but what they're getting from us is the same platform.
Right. And then given the prevalence of open source in this space, right, how do you think about just the potential threat that might pose further on down the line in terms of catering to some of those customization needs and organizations like these financial services institutions that have massive internal tech resources in being able to deploy one of those open source capabilities, customize it internally? How do you think about that space today?
Yeah, I think if we make a robust product with a really simple API, it'll allow clients to do any kind of customization they want after using our API. I think it's similar to Stripe. Stripe makes a phenomenal platform. It's standard with a really simple API, and customers use it for many different ways. Yeah.
Okay. So then thinking about just the kind of headlines buzz around this space right now, there's been all these different use cases of deepfakes being employed in different exploits. You talked about some of the use cases that your customers are looking at. I mean, which of those different headlines have you found most compelling in being able to convince some different customers or generate, I think you used the term earlier, kind of like scaring people with these personal stories? Which have you found most successful for that use case?
I don't think I can answer that question without mentioning Taylor Swift. Given a lot of what we're doing is education, we need people to find things that are relatable. And I think the deepfake pornography in the news about Taylor Swift really brought the deepfake problem home to a lot of people in a way they can understand. And then beyond that, obviously, the $25 million wire transfer video-based deepfake that occurred last week, and the President Biden deepfake that happened a few weeks ago in the New Hampshire primary. So, all different fraud use cases, whether it's affecting someone's reputation, affecting election and geopolitical events, or, just straight identity fraud. We're seeing more and more of those. And, we definitely are glad the news platforms are covering it for just general education.
Right. How does your company focus change given that emphasis on education, right? I mean, obviously a big part of that is just finding different opportunities to speak about the problems that exist. And the last episode talked to Greg over at Ghost Security, and he was talking about the challenges of being a category leader, category creator, and just the pressures that places on a business. What have you found most successful in terms of specific tactics for providing that education to your customer base, to the masses?
I think we're trying to do as much education across as many mediums as possible. We do a lot of public speaking. We're on TV. We're learning how to be public speakers. We're giving a lot of immediate commentary on live events tied to deepfakes. We also do a large number of webinars to different industry groups and companies. Typically, it's a 1 to 2 hour webinar walking through really everything in terms of the problem, and then different types of solutions. But it's early days. This is like the early 90s within antivirus software. And, the volume will be increasing and the problems will get a lot more personal. And our goal is to educate companies and consumers before it's a problem.
Interestingly, I mean, part of what you're saying is convincing the average consumer, right? But your business model isn't really targeted towards the average consumer. It's targeted towards businesses, right? So, I mean,
Correct.
Thinking about that kind of objective, is your goal trying to get the average consumer to start asking these businesses if they have that capability, or just generating that buzz because businesses are ultimately like run by consumers? I mean, can you just talk through that kind of strategy there, how those tie together?
Yeah, I think we're targeting a new term that we're using called enterprise consumer, because the person within a company using us is effectively a consumer. And the way they're thinking about it using the product is very consumer facing. And so I think we're working to engage our product team to ensure that the platform and the features are simple enough to use, given what's going on behind the scenes is very complex. So we use color coding, red, yellow, green. We use 0 to 99 as far as confidence intervals. Our goal is that how to provide insights to someone who's not a programmer or AI expert, where they can make very quick decisions based on our output.
Okay, and we haven't talked about the competition much yet, right? Obviously, you guys were fairly early in this space. It was beginning of 2022, if I'm getting that right, that you were in Y Combinator for it. So probably the idea had been coming together a little bit before that. Obviously, AI's experienced its wave significantly later than that at this point. So, I mean, thinking about that kind of timing and the new folks who've jumped into this category in terms of deepfake detection, how do you think about your competitive positioning and just where you stand in the market today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting research teams thinking about this problem. Maybe no one thinking about it as broadly as we are across modalities. It's certainly a tremendous amount of work. We did launch what we're calling a model partner and a data partner program to see how we could really attract interest into the space. The thought of helping different research teams commercialize their models. So if anyone's listening who is a researcher focusing on deepfake fraud detection across audio, video, images, text, 3D, and beyond, we'd certainly love to talk to you and see how we can collaborate.
Okay, and we've alluded to Y Combinator a little bit here as well, right? I'm just thinking through that experience for you. A lot of talk around the value of Y Combinator, whether or not it's still worth it today, given the number of companies that are going through it. What's your perspective on like the most valuable piece or outcome that you got from that Y Combinator experience?
I think that Y Combinator is awesome. I think that Y Combinator is kind of a step above really every other accelerator globally. But with any accelerator, it's really what you make of it. And so, we're very active to the point of probably annoying some people. We engage and comment on every single post internally at NYC. We find a way to add value and or share our opinions on things with the goal of paying it forward. I think that Y Combinator has done the best job I've seen of not only any accelerator, but any, educational institution of creating a culture of sharing and a culture of collaboration. Everyone is knee deep in whatever their individual issue is, but all dealing with the same stresses, good stresses and bad stresses. We've been out of YC for a few years, and I think I still find that it's the only daily newsletter that I read, edge to edge, and find something to comment on, at least every other day. And I think that, as they continue to engage new cohorts, it's only getting better.
Yeah, pretty glowing review. Okay, so ceremonial last question for you here. Are you currently looking for investment or hiring?
If anyone is interested in working on the space or investing in the space, please reach out to us. My email is my name at ourcompany.com. So super easy to reach out. If you're a student thinking about the space, would love to talk as well. We try to attend as many conferences as possible, whether academic or general tech. So we're looking forward to meet as many people as possible. We expect the space to get more exciting, and we hope that the next generation of engineers and researchers and BD folks think about this as a career.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, again, Ben, really appreciate the time. So much happening in the space right now. Great to hear from you in terms of just the perspective on how it's all evolving and everything that you guys are working on.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and you can write to me at kyle@secureventures.io. I'm Kyle McNulty, and you've been listening to Secure Ventures.